Simply Liz.
What's left of her?
Ramadan
Alhamdulillah.
Mubarak. Like Wahid and Aisha.
Alaikum assalam, Ramadan Mubarak, everyone.
Ramadan Mubarak, we see. Alaikum assalam, Ramadan Mubarak. Ramadan Mubarak, Hadi.
Touch. All right. Alhamdulillah. I have too many images on here. Just one. Okay. Don't worry about saying the same thing. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. This is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Thank you for returning and continuing with this journey that we're on. We're going through the rise, the robbery, the redemption, the resurrection, the Renaissance. Effectively, it is the master narrative for African American Muslims, or our preferred term, Bilalian, which the end of this journey culminates in the why of that label, that term, that title. Okay, so what we've covered so far in principle, and again, the high altitude view, there are so many tributaries and so many capillaries off of these arteries that, if I got the right sizing, that the larger ones, we cover the larger ones, but not trying to cover all the details because it's just so much. But with regard to what we have covered, we covered number one, the rise and also the decline as it relates to us on the African continent. We're going to have to go ahead and just close that door because that knocking is going to be a problem. So Ibrahim can work out. So the rise and the decline and the robbery, we covered the robbery, both Robbery 1, which was the transatlantic slave trade, and then Robbery 2, the experimental clinic that produced that unique creature called the Negro, and we finished that portion of it. And now we're about to basically turn the corner. We're going to be going back the other way. You all have to have your conversation on the other side. Don't come for any play. The redemption, it actually breaks up into three parts. My hope is that we'll be able to cover part one of the redemption today. And the threefold design is redemption by nature, redemption by design, and redemption by divine. That's the intention. Let me do this. My grandchildren, you all have to go out. Jacob, all of you out. You have to go to the other side. But I'll make sure that the door is still closed. So there's redemption by nature, there's redemption by design, and there's redemption by divine. And we're going to see how these are going to be equated. But let's just walk through the material that we have. And that is speaking about this redemption. It's always important for us to talk about what we're not going to talk about. And first of which is there are numerous aspects and perspectives and conflicts and diverse opinions that exist regarding the life history of the so-called colored, Negro, African-American, Afro-American, Black people, and what is the reality and cause of their present state in the world, and their prospects for the future, and by what means. Rather than aiming to resolve these intricate debates and disagreements, our objective is to present our unique perspectives that shed light on the historical introduction of al-Islam into the lives of these people, particularly focusing on its journey from Africa to the Americas, to the southern plantation system to the slums and the ghettos of America to its evolved significance for the world today. That's our end point. Our end point is, okay, what does all of this history have to do with, and what difference does it make to the rest of the world and al-Islam in the world? I want to recommend to you a publication, and this is A History of Muslim African Americans. It's put together by the Islamic History Project group that was commissioned, let's say, by Imam W.D. Muhammad, and it's a most excellent book. That what we have covered, they have much more annotation, footmarks, footnotes, etc., that go to and are tied directly to some of the categories and some of the areas that we've talked about in this presentation. You can get it by going to www.wdmpublications.com. It was published in 2006. Very, very useful resource for what we're talking about from the beginning to the end. We want to begin to talk about and to address our presence. When I say our presence, I'm speaking about those that are called by all these different names: colored, Negro, Black, African American, Afro-American, Galalian now, etc. What about our presence before Columbus? As Dr. Ivan Van Sertima speaks of the African presence in ancient America, they came before Columbus. And so it's a very scholarly work, and you can also find it online. YouTube presentations that the doctor has done, excuse me. So to speak about the evidence of our presence on this, I'm just counting our DNA. I'm counting, when I say our presence, I'm talking about the DNA that we share as an ethnic historical group. So he provides strong evidence for the presence of African Muslims in ancient America before Columbus. One part of that evidence is botanical evidence. They discovered the discovery of cotton, and it has this long scientific name that I'm not going to try to read. They discovered this particular type of cotton in Cape Verde Islands, previously thought to be African. It was found to be native to the Caribbean and South America, indicating that there's a pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. That is, how did this cotton get from here to there, and maybe even vice versa? The idea is that it's known to have been Cape Verde Islands. If I'm still correct on my geography, I just find that in the course of preparing for this, not just today, but this whole series, Cape Verde is off the African coast, off the West African coast. Whenever I hear Cape Verde, I think, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Caribbean kind of thing. And it has that element to it, but that connection is there. So there's botanical evidence that there have been those who have come from Africa to the Americas again, and left these types of deposits along the way. Also, strong evidence for the presence of African Muslims in ancient America before Columbus was skeletal and artistic evidence. Analysis by a Polish skull expert, Professor Brzezinski, showed Africoid types in the Olmec civilization areas with terracottas and stone heads depicting Africoid features. I mean, you really got to ask yourself, why would anybody build a statue? I mean, Picasso didn't come to the 20th century. I mean, why would you make an image like that, and that image doesn't look like you, right? So these Olmec head statues and then terracottas and stone heads depicting Africoid features, this is complemented by carbon dating. That is, when they test the material And this carbon dating of Egyptian hieroglyphics, which were also found in these areas, and scripts in America that align with a pre-Columbian timeline. So these kinds of artifacts in concert with the timeline for as far as Egyptian, we talk about hieroglyphics and the like, and these kinds of imageries. It speaks to the presence of those who are the originators or who are again native to them. That's it. So this was something that I found very interesting here. This map, just look at these maps right here are current, meaning the flow of the water, the flow of the oceans. These are maps of currents, right? There's no sound. Oh my God. Let's see who's no. I know it. Well, no. Yeah. Well. Okay. Okay. So they have to work that out. All right. So these maps are the maps of the currents. So it's like these are the ways that waters connected with these land masses. This is the way that they flow. And in this one, there's my Cape Verde identification here, where Cape Verde are a set of islands off the coast of Senegal and Mauritania. We're deeper away from Mauritania, but Cape Verde is right there. And so there's a canary, they call it a canary current. You follow that current and it takes you to the north equatorial current. And then of course so when you have navigators leaving the west coast of Africa and they get in that current, what happens next is all natural. But around the world, around the entire globe, so when we see these, all these currents, they're saying these are ways that vessels can get on these currents and just ride. It's like just ride the wind. You know, the wind is going to be blowing it. You know, much of the traffic, no doubt, the air traffic that comes there when you're heading eastward, then the airlines follow an airstream that is particular for beneficial flight to the east. When you're coming back west, they follow an airflow that's more beneficial for traveling west. Okay, but it's the same way with this, and we know that we talked about the age of exploration, right? And we're given these images of the Magellans and the Columbuses and the Cortez and the others who are said to be like just so valiant because they braved the challenges of the great ocean, right? Here's part of our history here. Abu Bakari II, is identified as Africa's greatest explorer, and Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived. According to El-Omari's record of Musa's account, Abu Bakari's first fleet consisted of 200 ships filled with men, gold, water, and food for 2 years. They're going on this excursion, adventure, exploration. Excuse me. Only one of the ships returned, and its captain reported that the other ships had entered a broad current in the midst of the ocean and disappeared. Have you ever made a paper boat? And there used to be gutters with water flow in them. So I can remember making paper boats, and you just put that paper boat on that current, and it just floats. You didn't need an engine, you didn't need a rowing, you didn't need any of that. it just floats in that massive current. And when you understand, I've mashallah been on cruises where that ocean will let you know just how small that cruise ship is. When you look at it and you get on it, it's a floating hotel. It's like there's a hotel floating on water. But when it gets out there in that ocean, man, it's a toothpick. It's like, it's nothing. When that thing starts rocking, you really know where the power lies in this whole scene. Okay, so similarly, the idea is that massive current is still that same massive current. So having the wherewithal to build ships capable of getting on that water, you don't have to have a lot of rowers. You don't have to have like internal combustion engines, etc. Of course, as we see here with the sails and the like representing that, the idea is that the water does the work. That's the point. The water does the work, and that's what it seems happened in relationship to Mansa Musa's brother. Despite this setback, Abu Bakr, the ruler of Mali, and thus Timbuktu, decided to build a fleet of 2,000 boats. Now you remember, Mansa Musa was the one that had so much gold that he caused inflation across the continent on his way to Hajj with what he gave out of the gold. So in terms of the wherewithal to be able to resource this activity is obviously there and present with the Mali Empire. So to build a second fleet of 2,000 boats and command it himself, he conferred power to Musa, specifying that if he didn't return after a reasonable amount of time, Musa should inherit the throne. In 1311, Abu Bakr set out with his fleet down the Senegal River and headed west in the Atlantic. He never returned to Mali, and his brother became Mansa Musa, that is the leader Musa, in 1312, right? So this Senegal here. So you see, I'm sorry, on the let me see if I can get y'all back. So you see here, so taking off from Senegal, getting on that current, that Canary current, right off this, again, Cape Verde, right? So you get on that, and that current takes you west. It takes you in that direction. That's what he did. That's what he was on, and again, was never seen again. So more evidence in terms of coming before Columbus. We're talking about to the west here. There's metallurgical evidence. What it shows is that what happened was that Columbus, on his second voyage, was told by the Native Americans of Haiti, then known as Hispaniola, that black-skinned people had come in large boats from the south and southeast, trading with the Americans in gold-tipped metal spheres. Although Columbus was initially skeptical of this claim, he took a cautious approach by sending samples of these metal spheres, back to Spain. The Spanish metallurgists examined these samples and determined that the metal spheres had the same ratio of gold, silver, and copper alloys as spears being formed or forged in African Guinea. So this is like the cotton, right? How did these plants that are native to this location in Africa, how'd they get over here? I mean, pollen travels, but they don't travel that far, right? And so now you have implements these gold, silver tip spheres. Now you have those, and the composition of those spheres are like those that are being forged in African Guinea. And this metallurgical evidence supported the notion that there had been a pre-Columbian transatlantic contact between Africans and Native Americans. Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick does a lot of work in this area. Speaking of the African American and Muslim discovery of America before Columbus, he says the fall of Granada, which is a part of Spain, the fall of Granada in the late 15th century enabled the subsequent expeditions of Columbus to the Americas. The surrender of Granada to Ferdinand and Isabella, the Spanish monarchs, marked the end of the Muslim rule. This is that 1492. Marked the end of the Muslim rule in Al-Andalus, another term for Spain, in Andalusia, and facilitated the Spanish exploration and conquest of the New World. The transfer of knowledge from Muslims to Europeans. So again, because of the victory and the loss, for as far as the Muslims are concerned, well, then to the victor goes the spoils. So the whole navigation capability, the inventions, and when we talked about the slave trade, the trans-Saharan trade networks that had been built up, they inherited, quote unquote, they acquired, whether you call it as a consequence of booty or victory, the assets from the previous powers and leadership, in this case, the Moors, if you will, were quote unquote inherited, taken by the Isabel and Ferdinands of Europe with the fall of the Muslim power and authority. So the point is, they acquired these navigational skills, geography, the mapping, and so many other things about oceanic voyages. That is what assisted them in their age of exploration, right? The presence of Muslims or Moors and covert Jews called Moranos on these voyages was a large part of the continuation of Islamic influence into the Americas, despite their political downfall in Europe. Again, it's like the languages like lateral transfer, right? It's like, okay, we lost. We're still here. Now we're involved in this, talking about Muslims. We're involved in this. And so we're riding over here with the ones who are riding over here. And so we show up when they showed up. We may be out of focus and we may not be the stars of the show, but we were on the boat and we were there in presence. Along with which, the fact that you were using the technology that we actually developed in order to accomplish that. So again, this also speaks to the idea of not only coming to these shores as slaves. One example of such, the Spanish explorer Vasco Balboa, which is a name that's very known. I think there's a school in San Francisco called Balboa. So he was an explorer, but along with Balboa was Esteban the Moor, or Estebanico de Dorantes. He was a Muslim from Morocco who came to America with the explorers and not as a slave. So we're going to touch on no details for me. If inshallah, my co-partner in this process, if some of these areas you can get into in detail in those east way I'm speaking of, this would be a good area. I'm just touching on part of it. The servants of Allah is something that covers the Muslims enslaved, African Muslims enslaved in the Americas. It's by Sylvia and Juf, and also Alan D. Austin. It's really surprising. I was trying to find a picture of Alan D. Austin for some reason. I wasn't giving up any pictures of him on Google search. But very, very important publication on African Muslims in antebellum America. That is, while slavery was still going on. Transatlantic Stories and Spiritual Struggles by Alan D. Austin. So I'm just going to give you some names and just pure snippets. Omar ibn Said, a Muslim born in Senegal, 1770, was enslaved for 56 years before his death. In 1837, he was known for praying 5 times a day, facing the east, and was acknowledged by slaveholders, travelers, journalists, scholars, diplomats, writers, priests, and missionaries. Very famous. And we, in our association Imam, one of the Muhammad, is a masjid down in, I believe it's Fayetteville, North Carolina, Masjid Omar ibn Said. Alhamdulillah, wonderful continuation of that great history. Bilali from Guinea, enslaved by his grandfather. That's the difference between traditional and chattel slavery. Enslaved by his grandfather on Sapelo Island, Georgia, was known for keeping all the plantation acts in Arabic and was buried with his Quran. His Quran on a remote plantation suggests that he may have written it himself, meaning he didn't have one. Where to get one? He wrote it. Allahu Akbar. So it's like that knowledge was present. Also, Yaro Mahmoud. It says on the cover, From Slave Ship to Harvard, Yaro Mahmoud and the History of an African American Family by James Johnston. Mahmoud, enslaved by Bill family in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., was known as a jack of all trades and was able to earn his own money from his endeavors. A brick-making agreement with Bill's wife eventually led to his manumission in April 1807, making him an entrepreneur, bank investor, and homeowner in Georgetown. This is 1807. So we're about to go into this experiment that was done by this person, Dr. John Cairns, because we've been talking a lot about DNA, and we've been talking a lot about dominant recessive genes, etc., and inherited traits, and how certain traits that were necessary for survival can come into one generation, and then in turn that same condition, because of its survival value, be passed on to the next generation. And so this is an experiment that has a lot to say about, well, the Negro, the product of the Negro. Let's just go on and go through with it. To begin with, lactase and lactose experiment. This is what it is, and more will be explained as we go. It's a lactase-lactose experiment. It overthrew all of the premises that Darwinian evolution rests upon, proving that Darwinian, that is random mutation. See, Darwinian evolution, the way that it's presented to us and in the world, and has been so for 150 years or so, they say all these things just happen by accident. I won't go into the refutations about that, but no, it didn't happen. There's something by nature, because we're talking about redemption by nature. So then we're talking about what nature does under what circumstances. And so there's a particular set of circumstances that the Negro came under, and then nature came in and did what it does in the light of those circumstances. And actually also you can get a feel when you understand that that rather deliberateness. You know, it's almost like saying God, it's like God saying, because the laws of nature are the will of God, it's like God saying, no, I got this. It's like, okay, I see what you did there. No. We're going to fix that. But Allah already has it in the design of nature. Okay? It just so happens that the Negro falling into that peculiar and unique condition called forth this behavior from nature for the redemption of what they had lost. Okay, so that's inshallah what we'll see as we continue. So the idea of the randomness, which is to say that nature has no objective, nature has no purpose, nature has no aim. Everything just happens by happenstance, randomly. No, that's a lie. This experiment done in 1988 by Dr. John Cairns disproved all of that. So the idea of random mutation and non-creator evolution is completely and totally false. And this is what we're gonna continue to speak to. So the major scientific premise is this: that there are genetic mechanisms that cause mutations in an organism when the organism is stressed. Now, I want you to be sure to make the bridge between what we talked about in terms of trauma and stress as it relates to those that were experiencing the transatlantic slave trade, those that were experiencing the experimental clinic of chattel slavery on the slave plantation, and the life that follows after that was so filled with violence and trauma. I mean, lynching was an industry. Postcards for lynching. Postcards that were shared like baseball cards between white families. And they were collectors. They sent them all over the country. Collectors of photos that had been converted to postcards of lynchings. It was an industry. And I want to refer you again to Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, by Isabel Wilkerson. She just covers all that just so clearly. But the point is that, okay, were we not stressed? Were we not, just to put it lightly, right? So nature has a mechanism that when an organism becomes stressed, there is a natural response to that stress. So this peculiar type of stress and trauma that produced the Negro, and that is part and parcel of their life, then nature is already at work from that perspective, but then it comes in to do unique work for the unique set of circumstances that the Negro found themselves in, or then in which they were placed, I should say. And these mechanisms are involved with rewriting the genetic code to upgrade the organism to fit the environment that they are in. So that's a part of what we said, because that's that side that, okay, the chattel slave, the captured African, put in the southern slave plantation system, new environment. The environment says, do this or die. Nature says, okay, we'll adapt. So nature adapts, but this horrible, negative environment, the adaptation was a negative, dehumanizing adaptation, but it was an adaptation that kept the body alive. Okay? So nature, even in that, was still doing what nature is intended to do. So this speaks to, again, there was genetic work done by nature to transform the chattel slave, the captured African, into the surviving Negro in this world and in this environment. But nature, in a manner of speaking, nature said, look, I'm just doing my job under the circumstances. As long as this is what has to happen. All right. Something has to happen to get things moving in the other direction. And that's what we're about to speak more to continue. So essentially, how did the experiment go? Step one in the Dr. Cairns experiment was this: fabricate a bacteria that had a mutated lactase enzyme protein. walk with me on this. I'm going to go slow because there's a mirroring Negroes lactase mutation. Negroes lactase mutation. It's the same thing. So I'm trying to show in nature how what was done deliberately in the slave plantation, the experimental clinic to make a Negro. Well, what this doctor did, he worked to make a mutated lactase enzyme. Okay? Mutated lactase enzyme, Negro on the slave plantation. All right. So now we look at what happened with this mutated lactase enzyme and we follow it in conjunction with the history of the Negro, right? So the Negro was the prime product of chattel slavery. And so therefore, the Negro was a human mutation in a fashion as was the lactase enzyme that was mutated by the experimenter. Okay? All right, so that's step one. Fabricate a bacteria that had a mutated lactase enzyme. The Negro was a product of an experimental clinic which dehumanized them by destroying their vital human organs. Understand this. That mutated lactase enzyme had something destroyed in it that was otherwise natural and normal for it. The captured African chattel slave, likewise, something natural for it was destroyed in them so that they can become this abnormal mutated thing, right? And for us as human beings, the organs of family structure, culture, name, religion, tradition, history, etc., all that had to be removed, distorted, destroyed in some way to create a Negro. And if we had a scientific language, we could say, okay, in order to mutate this lactase enzyme, I had to do this, and this. Some kind of unnatural thing to that enzyme in order to get it to the state that they're aiming at. All right, the significance of this step one is that the lactase enzyme is what binds to lactose, the lactose signal, and breaks down lactose so the cell can convert the lactose into energy and food. That is, so here you have the lactase, the mutated lactase enzyme, but has been put into a condition where it can't do what its natural job is, which is to provide food and energy by breaking down lactose, right? So you have whatever this picture may not necessarily be things that have lactose in it, it's just aesthetics. But the point is that there are food items, if you will, that have in them lactose. And if you consume the lactose, then you need the lactase enzyme in order to break down that food so that you can get energy and nutrition from it. But if you lack the lactase enzyme, then you can be in the presence of lactose, but because you lack the lactase enzyme, you can't get the benefit from the lactose. Okay? So it's just like I'm trying to see what's going on in this room, but I have no eyes. If I don't have any eyes, I can't see anything. No ears, I can't hear anything, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Well, this is the case here with this. So here's step two. He's experimenting now. What he did after creating that mutated bacteria, lactase, he put that mutated bacteria into a petri dish where the only source of nutrition was lactose, nothing else in here. I take it, put it in an environment that's 100% lactose. I've mutated it to where it doesn't have the lactase enzyme. So there it is. Boom. Here you are in a pure lactose environment, lacking a lactase enzyme. Let's see what happens. That's what the experiment was. So he put those mutated bacteria into a petri dish where the only source of nutrition or nutrients was lactose. This effectively represented a starvation situation for this mutated bacteria without a lactase enzyme. So, I mean, the natural situation was, it's like, how could it possibly even be considered or even hypothesized that, oh, it's going to be all right? No, the expectation is that it's just going to die. It's not going to survive at all, right? So, like to keep that parallel between the Negro and the mutated lactase enzyme, it's like that. So we were the lactase enzyme made on the slave plantation, and then when emancipation and everything else comes about, so now with whatever we have been mutated to and whatever has been taken out of us, the vital organs for functioning, we were released from that environment, but into an environment that hated you, into an environment that wanted to kill you, right? So not only were you in a mutated situation, now you're put into a situation post-emancipation, racially toxic America, when you got the black codes, the Jim Crow laws, lynching, etc. That was the order of the day. And I hasten to say that, reminded from Caste, the book by Isabel Wilkerson, look, the Nazis learned from the Southern white man. They came to study the Southern white man, how he did what he did. And they said, no, that part right there is a little too much for us right now, but we'll use this. So the whole anti-miscegenation and all the rest of those kind of things. Nazis were tutored by our slave masters and their children, right? So that ought to say something to you. These are all images, and that American flag thing on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see it. If you ever seen that before, it's like, I don't know if they got a Pulitzer Prize or whatever for that, but that says almost everything. This guy is taking the American flag, and he's about to stab this guy in the stomach with the American flag. That's really something. So mashallah. Okay, so that was our total 100% lactose environment by comparison. Okay, you're that guy, we did this to you, and now you're out here, and niggas and Irish and Jews and dogs need not apply, whatever those signs say. Okay, going on to step 3 in this experiment. So hypothetically, the expected outcome was that the bacteria would simply die, or at least not grow, due to lack of nutrition. Okay, you're a mutated lactase enzyme. You don't have the wherewithal to break down lactose. I put you in a purely lactose environment. Let's see what happens. So hypothetically, you should not be able to exist because you can't get nutrition, you can't get energy. How are you going to survive? All right. We're talking about redemption by nature, right? And here she is. But step 3 is that the Negro, by definition and intent, was to die and remain dead. Necro is also the same terminology for Negro. And to remain dead as a human being, because he was engineered in the experimental clinic to never, G-R-O, grow, to never grow. In a caste system, she writes, in a caste system, the mud seal is the bottom caste that everything else rests upon. A Southern politician declared this central doctrine from the floor of the U.S. Senate in 1858. He said, In all social systems, there must be a class to do the menial duties, to perform the drudgery of life. Senator James Henry Hammond of South Carolina told his fellow senators, that is a class requiring but a low order of intellect and but little skill. It requires its requisites are vigor, docility, fidelity. Such a class you must have. You must have. It constitutes the very mudsill of society. So this is his anti-abolition position and statement. Say, look, if you take them out of that position, take them away from that, then the whole house falls down. Because the house has to have a mud seal, in order for it to remain in place and not get rotted out or whatever. Well, and that's the role that was expected, and for so many, it's still expected for blacks. Or some of it, they're ready to get rid of us and let the quote unquote the Hispanics in some way just simply displace us on that. I think the Hispanics also have another plan. They have a plan of their own, I believe. However, what happened was that the bacteria grew colonies still. What happened? How is that? And likewise, despite the experimental clinic, the Negro manifested human qualities as a group immediately after slavery. Some of these images I didn't make particular notes about it, but the point is, we had fraternal organizations, we had churches, we had orphanages, we had women's groups. All these were activities that were just after slavery that were they were in place and they were on. How is that coming out of a condition that these people had been how can you say dehumanized into? Is because the soul, the Imam speaks about, rahimahullah, speaks about the soul. The soul is always innocent, and God says in the Quran, said over every soul He has placed a protector. So only so much can be done. Only so much can be penetrated. It can get very, very deep. And yes. Oh my God. Missed about 2 or 3 slides. Let's see what we got here. I'll go back to a couple. I don't know where it's cut off. I'll let the other group catch up. So we went through this, so you can put this with your memory in terms of that. And so we're now on this slide, and this slide is talking about the advancements that were made and the achievements that were established. In that these gentlemen here, to call them such, it would make me think about the Reconstruction period, and how there were legislators that were Bilalian, African American, quote unquote, Negroes and ex-Negroes, and that right afterwards. And of course, there was to say pushback is light, but we had the wherewithal, the intellect, etc., to be able to engage politics in some manner. But it's much higher than what I'm saying right now, meaning we were much more forceful, much more powerful, much more civilized in so many ways that transcended the work that was done on the experimental clinic. And these are just simply images of that. So what happened is, for the mutated enzyme, how is this possible? It was possible only if the mutated enzyme somehow started working again, enabling the cells to eat and to have energy to divide and grow. Something happened inside that mutated lactase enzyme that enabled it to regrow what was taken out by the experiment. And by that regrowing, survive and grow bacteria colonies. So some of the Negroes' performance immediately after slavery is explained by human nature and genetic capacitation, right? Number one is like they were able to achieve after slavery by doing for themselves, using the acquired skills that they had been forced to use for others. So I'm still a blacksmith. I'm still, whatever, horseman husbandry, agriculture, all that. And there's a quoting a maxim somewhere. I don't have it specifically at this moment, but that is the case in general. That the slaves grow more than the masters. The slaves grow more than the masters because the masters are not exercising anything. They're not, except the kind of brute power that they may have to exert over the slave. But it's the slave that's solving the problems. It's the slave that's facing the problems. It's the slave that has to be creative. It's the slave that has to have hope. The slave that has to have faith. The slave that gets their intellect developed. It's the slave that gets their muscles developed. And all those things are not being done for the slave master or by the slave master. So in terms of this turnaround that happened right there and right after this, after emancipation or what have you, they were able to achieve because now I'm doing these things for myself. And I'm not doing them under the force of the others. So, I mean, I just only need to just say one thing. Tulsa, Oklahoma, and ultimately, unfortunately, historically, the fact is that, that kind of do-for-self behavior, et cetera, it grew. But when it got too big and generated so much jealousy and so much anger and prejudice that they bombed it. There's the first bombing in the United States from the air was bombing Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was at the 20s, like 20, 21, 23. So they couldn't even stand. Set me free. Okay, leave me alone. Let me go do my own thing. Okay, you do your own thing. Oh, you're doing too much. Let's tear it down. So, you can't really have a problem at the time of the 1930s when, yes, what do we do? Am I? They didn't see this slide?
Yeah, but we're not looking at the one.
Okay, what are they looking at right now?
Just looking at when they were able to achieve after slavery.
Yes.
Going for themselves. This one is
Oh, my bad. Right. Keep letting me know. That's fine. We just gonna ride this out naturally as it go because you put the information together as we continue. Okay, so now we're ready to go. So this is the one that we should be seeing both screens now, right? They were able to achieve after slavery. That's what everybody's saying. Okay, good. Let me switch it before it goes to sleep again. Okay, so the findings are, according to evolutionary theory, that this bacteria replicated in this starvation situation is an inherent contradiction. That means that correction of that mutation in that situation, the lactase in a purely lactose environment, that was a purposeful change, not random, not just good luck. It was a purposeful change, which means that there's something of an intelligence, something of a something with with a deliberate intention to fix a particular situation operating inside that enzyme, inside that mutated enzyme. Something was still there that would enable that enzyme to survive in that otherwise unsurvivable environment. That's a big deal. So the starvation situation is an inherent contradiction because there is no naturally occurring cell which lacks a lactase enzyme protein, but yet and still can metabolize lactose, get energy, and grow. So that it's not natural. That it could do that. There's no organism in nature lacking that capability that would be able to do that. So that's unnatural. You can even go back to start talking about it as a miracle, right? So the progress of the Negro so soon after slavery was a natural miracle, since his original debasement was so thorough and so complete. And as Frederick Douglass pointed out in 1883, literally describing that pure lactose environment surrounding that mutated lactase enzyme, he's saying, the colored man is surrounded by an adverse settlement which fetters all of his movements. Meaning that every which way I turn, I don't have nothing on my team. Everything and everybody is against me, right? And there's other conversation that goes on. So if I act like a buffoon, then they like me. If I try to act intelligent or whatever, then they hate me. It's like it doesn't work no matter where I go, he said. But we know Frederick Douglass got over all that. So this meant that though they were in effect in a closed system under an absolute master, they yet evolved into a form unintended by either the system or the master. All right? So something happened that wasn't in, I'm going to call it the devil's plan right now. Okay? So cellular genetics by Allah's design and accounts, I should say it accounts. Cellular genetics by Allah's design accounts for this natural miracle, which is what? The rehumanized Negro after 379 years of slavery. Because these people that had this phenomenal performance and this uncharacteristic behavior, not behaving like the prototypical Negro, lacking all of those human qualities, they come out expressing those human qualities. And again, we talked about antagonistic and synergistic and parallel behaviors. So they were reduced enough in their antagonistic behavior to be able to do synergistic activities and grow and evolve and establish institutions. And again, we talk about orphanages and women's groups and businesses and the like. Those things happen. But again, remember, the recessive alleles, the recessive genes, if you will, is one way of surviving, but that's not the only way of surviving. But in the main, because of the nature of the situation during chattel slavery, that was what it called for. But this change, this emancipation situation, that constitutes a new environment. You're in a new environment. You're no longer in the slave environment. And so the response to the new environment is a new adaptation, was a new adaptation for those who succeeded in this way. And remember, a part of the idea where what the environment demanded you adapt to, remember, a part of it was also to deceive, to deceive and to make the one think that you are what you are not. And so you're still able to do what you are, excuse me, you're able to advance and the way you want to advance, but you're doing so in secret, right? There's a little movie called Nightjar, and there's a little girl on there, and we know about Frederick Douglass, for example. That part of the lore around his life is uh, that he would like trick someone who could read, a white person, whatever, something to read, to give him some kind of learning for as far as reading is concerned. But you had to have the sagacity and the wherewithal to be able to trick this one in order to get what you want out of them. And this little girl in this movie, she said, I stole me some letters yesterday. I mean, literally, because it's against the law for them to read. And that's what the whole piece, Nightjar, was about. Literacy among the slaves, and what a threat that literacy actually represented, and how much contraband reading actually was among them. So the whole story is about a little girl who sneaks and learns how to read. And the other slaves, if you will, when she lets them know that I stole me some letters the other day, they get frightened to death, right? You stole some letters. And well, a little scene in the movie was where preacher was reading something. She had a book on her lap. He was reading, saying something, and she started crying. She started crying about what was being read, and then the white preacher, that he knew that she could read because she was emoting, responding to the reading, mashallah. So the idea is that, there's a saying, every shut-eye ain't sleep, right? So we learn how to act this way, but on the other side, be another way. And that was also a survival technique for our deeper humanity, right? So how was this natural miracle possible? The environment itself was the source of the stress that promoted the mutation to occur, which repaired the lactase enzyme. Okay. My battery's down. Can you unplug there? Unplug this one, the one that goes to this, and plug in the block that goes to this. So just follow this to the end and unplug it, and then plug in the other one. Yeah, should be the white block. Perfect. Thank you. Yes. So watch. Stress coming and going. Put it like that. Stress coming and going. Okay. Chattel slave. No, let's go with the enzyme first. Natural lactase enzyme. Then that lactase enzyme mutated to where it lacks the wherewithal to process lactose. So now I've created this mutated enzyme. All right? Now, I put that mutated enzyme into all lactose environment. Now, what have I done? I've introduced stress. And so this is for organic life, not just for us. I mean, there's so many things you can look at. There's this Cleve or Clive Baxter, spell it different kind of ways, Baxter, Backster. You'll find it. Put in the question, do plants have feelings? Do plants have feelings? And you know about, I believe most of us would know about Mythbusters. So Mythbusters, their whole thing is busting myths. These people say that plants have feelings and that you can telepathically connect with plants, blah, blah, blah. So we're the Mythbusters. So we're going to bust this myth. So they took the Cleve Baxter experiments and notions, what have you, and they brought it on the Mythbusters. The idea is trying to bust the myth. No, not a myth. It's not a myth. It's a real thing, right? So the idea that plants have feelings and plants have this awareness, yes, they're not in sync. Oh, correct. Thank you. Huh? I'm gonna get my signals together. All right. Okay, this is what we're speaking to. So the idea is that these plants have this telepathic connection. If you've ever seen the documentary I Am, you could find that. When you look on that, he does this thing with yogurt, right? And so they put these electrodes or whatever, these contacts, they put them in the yogurt, connected to this machine, etc. This is something I believe that's done by the Heart Math Institute as well. I think that's where he was visiting. The point is you can look up all this. Bonafide, sure enough, the idea is can my thoughts and feelings actually impact other organic life? And again, fact is that it can. So in the I Am documentary, then it's talking about the impact of the person speaking and his connection with the yogurt. And in the Clive Baxter, the idea of the relationship to our thinking and to plants. I'm bringing that point up where when I talk about living things, that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put, and every living thing has DNA. Plants have DNA, and all organic life has DNA. And that DNA and all DNA holds the history of its existence. I mean, the totality of the history of its existence is in every one of the member of that, whatever that group is. Doesn't matter. Human being, everything that ever was in my line of history, it is present, no matter how suppressed. It's present in my DNA. And it's the same way for plants. The DNA of a plant right here, right now, it didn't just get its DNA from its birth whenever it was born. It's the same DNA that has been with it from the time that its DNA was originally formed in wherever the original parent is. So what I'm saying is that in every strand, in every DNA, if you will, of whatever you're talking about, is the totality of the treasure and the possibility and the potential and the power of its entire history. Okay? So when that I feel I'm just almost slightly stepping over a line, but I'm going to tell you. So, because you got it. I pray Allah guide you and that you don't get it twisted. Just put it like that. Conversation with Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi. And so we were talking. So we're talking about death. Right? We're talking about death. And I said, Quran says, Inna khalaqnakum وَمَا خَلَقَكُمْ وَبَعْثَكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. So your creation and your resurrection is in no wise except as one soul. Nafsun wahida. And then Quran also says that He, Allah, خَلَقَكُمْ مِن نَفْسٍ wahida. He said He created you, that is all of us, from one soul. One soul. All of you, how many billion human beings on the planet? 7 point something billion. We all have this separateness, but we all actually constitute one soul. And your creation and your resurrection is no wise except as one soul. So if everything and if all are one soul, I asked him, I said, then that means nobody dies. It means nobody dies because it's all one soul. Nobody dies. He said, yes, that's correct. And so we have this idea about death. It's just totally over. But of course, alhamdulillah, we as believers, as we talked before, we have faith in the future in akhirah. We believe in life after death. It is a reality for us under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we just have that we can, if we don't remain cognizant, conscious, we can get this it's over kind of mentality about death. No. They're just in another part of life. And that's literally what the Quran says, speak not of my servants as dead, they're alive, but you just don't know how to see them. You just can't see them. So that's right there. In the real, there's nothing difficult, puzzling that you have to go through to get that. Say they're alive, but you just can't see them. Okay, so the Imam goes on and said, he says, you can get into a situation where your knowledge is exhausted. Your knowledge is exhausted. I'm sorry, I wouldn't cough if I was drinking water, but you know why I'm not, right? MashaAllah. You can get into a situation in your lifetime where you are, as we say sometimes, at your wit's end. It's like, I have absolutely no idea of what to do about this situation. He said, and you will get under some circumstances. That's parenthetical from me. He said you'll get help from an ancestor. You get help from an ancestor, right? Now there's several ways that you can read that. We don't worship ancestors and all the rest of it. So don't go try and do a seance to get the ancestor to answer your questions or anything like that. But it's already in Allah's design, that wherewithal, right? And I'm not just going to try to walk through it and work through it right now. But the point is that whoever my ancestors were, they're already in me. They're in me right now. How? In the DNA. And everything that was a part of what constituted them is also a part of what constitutes me. But whatever facet, feature, quality, potential, etc., that is heritable and that is inherited with my existence vis-a-vis the DNA, it would need to be genetically capacitated for it to come forward for use in my time. Remember we talked about recessive alleles and what have you. So those things are really dormant in me the further away, quote unquote, I get from them, and the more distinct my environment is, it doesn't call for that DNA. My environment that I'm living in right now doesn't call for my African ancestors' performance or potential or capacity that they needed in their life in the 11th century West Africa. My time in 21st century Oakland doesn't need 11th century West Africa now, because I'm not in an environment where that particular capacity is useful, but it doesn't mean it's not there. Right? But if I get into a situation, according to what the Imam is telling, I can get into a situation where it is analogous to a situation, and it affects me in a way that is analogous to a situation that an ancestor was in, then that's a way that I can also get help. All right? That's just very important. So the point is that lactose enzyme, having all of the potential for what it needs under stress, because as long as it has the DNA, it's got the whole package. In the nucleus is everything that was ever possible for whoever and whatever has the DNA The nucleus is the total package. Nothing was lost. It's there. But it takes, again, the stress of a situation and demanding something in particular to cause that particular performance to come forward. Okay? All right. So the point is that this lactase enzyme, it was put into a stressful situation. Was a stressful situation. I can't eat nothing in here. It's all lactose. I can't eat. That's stressful, right? A starvation situation, right? And so what happened? That nucleus, that genetic package said, we got to do something about this. And so the gene capacity inside that mutated lactase enzyme went to work to construct what this mutated enzyme is going to need if it's going to survive and get out of the stress that it's in. That's what happened. So it's saying here, the environment itself was the source of the stress. So one environment mutated it. Another environment stressed it to bring forward a skill that they were mutated out of. All right, what does it say about us? What this meant for the chattel slave was that from the moment of the first stress on the group soul, the nature of our human mechanism, individually and collectively, went to work like the genetic repair mechanisms to correct all the defects that were being imposed upon them. So keep your Muslim cap on. What does Allah say in the Quran? فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With every difficulty is the relief. So from the moment it started, I'm talking about the experimental clinic, everything else, nature was already saying, we got this. We got this. Because when God says, Usri Yusra, Inna ma'al Usri Yusra, with every difficulty, not after every difficulty and whatever, before every difficulty. No. With every difficulty is relief. So that's what has happened to us. So from the time they were working to take us down, nature was working to bring us up. So it didn't always look like it for sure. But alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, we are the outer expression of the yusr from the usr. Praise be to God. It's really, really important thing. All right, let's go. Let's see. A few more minutes here. So what is the key to this genetic repair mechanism? The Darwinists say the only time the DNA is copied or changed is when cells are dividing. Cellular genetics, which is what we're talking about, cellular genetics proves that when a cell is stressed, I want to hold on to that stress thing, because it is the very stress that makes us who we are and what we were, quote unquote, in the experimental clinic. It's that very thing that is also triggering the salvation mechanism that's in us by nature, right? So again, keep the Quran in your mind, where it says, it may be that you dislike something that's good for you, and that you hate, that you dislike something that's good for you, and you like something that's bad for you. So, hey, if any of us had a choice, hey, you want to go to Slave Plantation? I said, no. No, I don't. That's going to be good for you in about 400 years. No, I'll pass on that, right? No. So thank Allah, alhamdulillah, we didn't have a choice in that. We didn't have a choice. And our enslaved brothers and sisters didn't have a choice to some extent. Some jumped off the boat, what have you. But the point is that just simply to understand that God's work was already working from the beginning and has never been absent. Okay, cellular genetics proves that when a cell is stressed, it doesn't divide at all. It selects some genes that it goes into the laboratory of its own nucleus, right? It selects some genes to copy themselves by using an enzyme that deliberately induces mutations. Just don't worry about it, but it's very, 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 very clear. When we get to the whole farad and the lessons of the Nation of Islam and those things that many Muslims, and rightly so, would call shirk and bid'ah. And they're right. It was shirk and it was bid'ah. But it was just what the doctor ordered for the Negro. That's what we're going to get to that. Not today, mashallah, but that's what's waiting on the other end. Because that's what this is telling us. It's telling us that was mutated, it had to be selectively mutated again. So the mutation had to be mutated in order for it to get back the function that was lost in the original mutation. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So that's why when I split these up into three, redemption by nature, I'm trying to point out nature has an operating system that this is what we do. So the redemption began right there with nature. Now, the part that I'm talking about right now, the mutation of a mutation, now that has to be in the human space, that has to be done by design. And it was W.D. Farad that designed the mutation of the mutation that brought about redemption and an approximal restoration to what was taken out. We looked like we had it all back together. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We're good. Alhamdulillah, beautiful, wonderful, benefit, but it wasn't rooted in nature. It wasn't rooted in nature, but that's a whole nother story. Let's keep going. So the repair mechanism works by mutating the mutated gene. I'm talking about cellular genetics. That's what it does. That's what it happens by nature. But understand this, and this is for all things, all things. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the creation are ayahs. When we read the Quran, ayahs, signs. One of the ways of translating ayah is also miracle. It's not the favorite translation, but it is a miracle. For the reasons that we talked about before, because something happened that by nature in our experience should not happen. But see, once you understand the science of it, you can't call it a miracle per se, because it's just what nature does. So now it's a law of nature, so it's not unnatural, so it's not a miracle. You're just discovering let's call it the conscious and deliberateness in, quote unquote, in nature. In terms of translation of that, see, we as human beings, what we have to do is read the sign, like I'm doing, mashallah, I'm doing with cellular genetics. I'm reading to you cellular genetics and how cellular genetics relates to the redemption of the so-called Negro off of and out of the consequences that came upon them on the slave plantation. There's a sign for it. There's an ayah for it. And the ayah is this experiment and this function in the cellular nature. And now you translate that. Imam speaks to us about creation-supported social logic. Creation-supported social logic, CSSL, creation-supported social logic. What does that mean? It means look at something in creation, translate its meaning into something in society. translated appropriately as it should be applied in society. That meaning from what you read from that creation, translated appropriately to and apply it to society. When you do so, you are applying creation supported, meaning that I'm only telling you what nature has done, and I'm only translating it as to how it relates to us as human beings and as a society. Now you have creation supported social logic. Your social logic said, therefore, we should do this. Why? Because nature operates this way. And in order for us to get out of our life what nature allows by what it does, we need to do the same thing in our society. So you build a society based on creation supported social logic that comes from what? Comes from reading the creation. But you have to know how to read the creation and translate the reading to social application. And that's creation supported social life. This is what Imam Muhammad taught us. All right, so repair mechanism. All right, what are we doing here? Okay, alhamdulillah. What we got? Alhamdulillah, Allah is most gracious, most merciful. This little scope, I'll put it up here, but it's not. We're done for the day. This is where we're gonna pick up, inshallah, tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Next week. Yes, I'm ready to go. No, next week, inshallah. And I'm not even going to try to read this or anything like that. But that's what's coming. That's what's coming because the repair mechanism that we talked about, these great personalities, these are just images, obviously, of these great personalities in that history. These personalities, they were the miracles out of our DNA. The Harriet Tubmans, the Sojourner Truths, the Frederick Douglasses, the Martin Delaney's, and all those are products of that nature continuing to repair itself, and that's a great blessing. And to speak of W.D. Farad drew upon the excellence that these brought about in history. But for us today, for now, that's going to be it today. Any questions online? Any questions in here? Let me get you this mic here. One more time? Yeah, if you have a written question, then give it to Nozizwe and she.
Oh, sorry, sure.
Okay. I think there's a pin by that post right there. Look right here. Look down at your feet. Look at your feet. Is there a pin right there by that pole? Behind you. See that pole in the middle of the floor? Right behind you. Do you see a pin over there? Okay. I have been looking at that pin every time I go past it. I say, you gotta pick that up, but never get a chance to. You got it? Okay.
So this question is related to the previous topic before the break.
Okay.
Do you consider the tendency of African Americans to forgive their enslavers and subsequent generations of enslavers a manifestation to any degree of the Stockholm syndrome?
Okay. Do I see it? Even hold on to it. I have this one. Do I see that tendency or inclination in some to forgive as a part of Stockholm syndrome? No, not overtly. No. One is because the human soul. The Imam said it in the piece that we played from the Imam yesterday. I believe that was yesterday. I don't know. Time flies. We talked about Jonah and the like. He said the soul is always innocent. The soul is always innocent. So we are, and the part of the big fear for quote unquote so-called white people in general is that, oh, you mean after all we done to you is like, shoot, we can't let y'all have no power because we know what y'all gonna do because it would be right for you to do that if you. So we can't trust you because we think that you're going to be retaliatory in that respect because that's how quote unquote they are. No, I think there is that genuine sense of love, forgiveness, and honesty because just like I talked about, I never had to suffer the Jim Crow, black codes, and all the other threats, and so my life is a life that is not influenced directly by that. So consequently, my disposition, my demeanor, my capacity is going to be a little different as it relates to forgiving. I don't want to go to it right now, but I will. I'll go to it at another point in our conversation. So let me just let that be my answer. No, because Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, Allah asked us to forgive in ways. Look at the story. If you're Muslim asking this question, go and look at the story of Mista, the one who started and promoted the Aisha controversy. This person was family and was a family person that Abu Bakr was supporting financially, and then Abu Bakr found out that they were the ones that were promoting the Aisha was a fornicator, adulterer, what have you, and he was just so ticked, to put it lightly. And he said, I ain't gonna give him nothing. And now Allah revealed, he said, no, you are gonna give him. You keep doing what you were doing before, blah, blah, blah. So the point is that Allah expects those who believe in whatever order you're on, in your sense of relation with Allah, then sometimes you have to forgive when you don't feel that forgiveness is due, but then that also becomes an honor and a blessing for you from Allah. That's a kind of magnanimous kind of charity to do that. That's bigger than money to be able to really do that. So no, I wouldn't take it all as that. No doubt there may be some who are in that condition. But let me just end my answer right there.
Right. I'm just going to rephrase this a little bit. So this is pertaining to the repair mechanism, to the collective soul.
Yes.
Is specific to the believer.
The question is, how does it resonate in the idea of post-traumatic slavery?
It's talking about the same thing. I mean, that same PTSD that I think it's because of the speakers. I think if you're near a speaker, they get reverb in it. That same PTSD is one more time. Read the statement again. I'm sorry.
Pertaining to the repair mechanism, the collective soul.
Yes.
That's specifically to.
Okay, how it relates to slave syndrome. I think that's a part of what I've said is that there's one stress that mutates. There's one stress that dehumanizes whatever that the slave clinic was. But then there's also a role that it plays in the restoration. So when we get to these personalities like Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells and Sojourner Truth, so many, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, blah, blah. They are a response to the stress. They are a response to the stress. Frederick Douglass responds to the stress. Harriet Tubman responds to the stress. That's nature bringing forward what would, if it gets to the magnitude and strength that its spirit is calling for, it will bring about the change that will remove the stress. And the source of the stress. So yes, you have a stress that mutates, and then you have a stress that repairs, right? And so the group soul, that's how we get benefit. We get benefited by look. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm X, and W.D. Muhammad, etc., where did they come from? They came from us. They came out of us. They were born due to the collective pain that we all suffer from, and they bring a power that is designed, if adhered to help each one of us who are part of that group soul to repair ourselves. And as each one of us repairs ourselves, then the totality of the group soul is benefited. Others? We'll work it out. Did you get your question out?
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to say that in that
Why don't we
concept,
do this? But go ahead and give me the mic and let him come a little closer, so that maybe the people on the online can hear. So just come a little closer to me, my brother, because there are people listening online that they can hear your statement. You can come in. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that given
Do
that
you have a green light or no?
I do. Hello.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to use mine. Something wrong with that mic. Set it down.
I was just going to say that given that concept of the collective soul regenerating itself per se,
Yeah.
In a sense, the idea of post-traumatic slavery really doesn't exist if, from a believer standpoint,
Yes.
With ease, with every hardship
Right.
comes ease.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
Yeah. So it was just like a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I can take it if that's the end of it. Yeah. So effectively, what it's saying is that it ceases to be an issue for someone who embraces in the matter with difficulty comes relief. And see, and this is what, when you have these counseling methodologies and psychology and etc. What are they offering? They offer, this is no criticism. This is just an expression, like an explanation. They're saying, okay, in order to cope with this, do that. So they give you coping strategies for what? Whenever you start feeling this way, prick this rubber band 3 times or whatever. And then say again?
I said, that sounds like the mutation.
Yeah, it is. It is in a manner of speaking. So the point is that this is what Al-Islam gives us. Every situation that a human being faces now and in the past, there is something in Al-Islam to tell you this is how you deal with it, right? And so a believer who embraces those strategies, and this is what Al-Islam is, it's strategies for life, right? And God says, this day have I perfected for you your way of life and have completed my favor on you and have preferred for you Al-Islam as a way of life. So see, some people make a statement where it says, well, my philosophy of life is don't give them no more than they can take, whatever it might be. And I'm just talking, right? So it's like, so put Al-Islam in that framing, right? But my philosophy of life is say what is good or keep silent. What's that? That's just hadith, right? Well, my philosophy of life is whoever has a seat has more of a right to it when they return. My philosophy of life is, the best among you is the one who gives the greetings first. All those statements are just Islamic statements. So that is to say that our philosophy of life has to be saturated with and lived through the principles and the values that Quran and the Prophet have given us. But I caution us to also make you get to we're aiming at, and as this journey continues, we're aiming at the authentic tie, your own, standing on your own roots for your own tree, living it out, okay? As opposed to thinking that if I'm not Egyptian, I'm not really down. If I'm not a Pakistani, I'm not really down. No, you're down by nature. But you need to understand the schema that relates to your organic life and history. And that's what we're talking about. All right. It's going to be it for today. Thank you all. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for your patience with the process and the like. And inshallah, if anybody got any real wisdom on how to overcome some of these challenges that you see us facing, don't come with a guess. If you got the technology, if you know somebody who has the technical wherewithal, put them in touch with me, and we'll see what we can do to adapt and adopt that. Everybody have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa Ramadan Mubarak.